Well, hello, hello, hello. Guess what time it is? It's time for another edition of Naked with Dr. Money. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey. Welcome to Naked with Dr. Money. This is my weekly blog where I share a little bit along my journey as the CEO of ZenoVerse Wellness Group, where we are developing wellness resorts around the world, my team and I. And this is where I share a little bit of how I maintain my mind, body, and soul, and really speak to the idea of mindset. So, as you know, each week I have a guest and we have a conversation around mindset. Today's guest won't be any different. I'll ask her if she thinks mindset is the result of nature, nurture, or a little bit of both. And then we'll talk about how mindset has contributed to her motivations. And more importantly, how mindset has helped her produce the manifestations. And as you know, we're all on a journey called life, and it really is what we make of it. And more, as I have these conversations, I'm reminded of different things, words, sayings that we were raised hearing. I know many of you have heard the saying of, are we looking at the glass from being half full or half empty? And it's an interesting thing that the more I explore and continue the journey, the more that many of these sayings really take on new meaning because you begin to see them in circumstances. I've shared with you also that I launched a community called Healing Our Homes. And the Healing Our Homes community is an extension of just that. Our goal is to have families come to our resorts, especially during the months of November and December. And we hope that families will have the desire to heal and be able to do so in a loving, nurturing environment. And so healing our homes is about that. It's healing our minds, emotions, and souls. And this is so that we can get rid of the emotional trauma that many of us have encountered and continue to encounter so that we can release it and ultimately live our best lives. So I'll send you information, or you'll be able to check into information about healing our homes. But today's conversation is with a dear friend. I like to say that when I think about it, I know that this year is my 40th high school reunion. So I think I've known this woman for probably that many years, not giving away anybody's age. But I would say we go back a little bit. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce you to my guest today. I'm so excited to have her as part of this conversation. Shelley Bradford Bell. She's known as a community organizer. I was introduced to her from the perspective of building her business in PR. She's worked with for profit, nonprofit, governmental agencies. She's held numerous boards, received appointments by former mayor, Speaker of the House, and Mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. She's developed and led not only the San Francisco Commission on the environment, which you know is something very important. We were just talking, I was having a conversation earlier with a colleague about the state of not only the Bay Area, but the state of the country as relates to the economy and some of the ills following the pandemic. She's also worked with major Fortune 500 corporations and organizations and individuals. And I've posted her website here. And what I love is when you go to her website, it opens up with Life is a Banquet. And she talks about she is a master of helping to transform lives, manifest dreams, how to live with grace and gratitude. And so, with that, I'm going to bring in Miss Shelley Bradford Bell. Hey, beautiful lady.
Bonjour, ma chérie.
How are you?
I am absolutely marvelous. Life
And
is
you
good.
look it.
What can I say?
Absolutely. You look at it, so great to see you. And I was so happy that you were available to have this conversation. And so, as I was sharing what this is about, because, people sometimes put you in a bucket. And so, as we are talking about our wellness resorts and what made them unique, it's not only am I building physical spaces, but it's how I'm curating those spaces with particular aims of producing outcomes. And so, our goal is to help people attend to their mind, body, and soul. And really, from the perspective that full life is 120 years and beyond. And so, if you were to look at yourself wherever you are along your journey and say, hey, what would it take for me to pivot, reposition, course correct, or whatever to make sure that I am living towards that full goal of full life? And then thinking about what are the contributions, what are the things that you can posit it to humanity by living full life and doing so from a point of being healthy, right? Because then you can be your best self and you can deliver all the lessons that you learn. And, we've got generations that totally still need a lot of guidance. And so today's conversation about mindset begins with like you to think about, what do you think? How do you think your mindset was formed? Meaning, when you first recognized that you had a particular mindset, whether you think it was a result of your nature, how you were nurtured, or a little bit of both.
Well, I can tell you right off, it's a little bit of both, because I was raised that whatever it is that I wanted to try, I was allowed to try. I remember wanting to play the piano, and my father said, okay, well, you're going to have to take piano lessons. You're going to have to practice every day. You're going to have to take lessons on Saturday. And if you want to do that, I'll get a piano. I said, you know what? No, I don't. Never mind.
That part, the practice part.
Right. But the option was mine, right? He made it clear what the rules would be. And never, when I wanted to go visit a friend in Dallas, and he's like, okay, you save your allowance and I'll pay whatever you haven't saved up. Save $1 a week out of your allowance. I mean, come on. Airfare was really, but I was always encouraged. My mother always encouraged me. I wanted to study fashion design, interior design, and architecture. So she took me to Ray Vogue School of Design to meet with them about fashion design. And she took me to Harrington Institute, that open house, to talk about interior design and architecture. Whatever it was I wanted, I was allowed to explore it, even if I made the decision I didn't want it. I wasn't made to feel bad if I said, well, never mind. I was made to feel supported that I at least had an opportunity to explore it and make my decision based on information. And that's the way my parents always were. And then
that's so powerful, because that's a lot of time what's missing is people's perspective is formed at that point, right? That's when you begin to believe either you can or you can't.
Right. My my ex-mother-in-law once told my son, he said he wanted to be an urban archaeologist. And she said, there's no Black people urban archaeologists. And I called her up and I said, don't you ever tell my son he can't do something. If there are none, he'll be the first. But I don't ever say you can't do this again to him, because I was not raised that way. I was raised to believe that whatever came out of my head that I wanted to do, regardless of how crazy it was, and you have known me for at least 40 years, I'm crazy.
That I think you are creative. I think you are Shelley, and it's like,
and that's what makes me crazy. That's what makes me crazy in this world, is that people look at me and go, what? It just came out of your mouth. When I was 6, 8 years old, somewhere in that world, my father brought home the encyclopedias, our first set ever World Book encyclopedias. And my father was a believer in reading and education, even though he had dropped out of high school. He wasn't going to let that happen to us. So he would bring an encyclopedia to the dinner table. My entire childhood, the 5 of us had dinner together. Never one night did we not have dinner together. And he'd bring and after at dessert time, he would read from the encyclopedia, and he'd read about something, and he'd read what was above it or beyond, and then we have to discuss it. And then he would do that with the newspaper. Herb Cupp was the big columnist in the Chicago Tribune, Sun-Times, and he would read, and what do we think of the item? And it made our curiosity about things. It manifests itself in, I'm going to go get that encyclopedia and read some more, right? Well, I opened it up and I saw the Eiffel Tower. And I was like, oh, I'm like 6, 8 years old. I love it. It's beautiful. And then I saw the Golden Gate Bridge. And I said, I'm going to move there when I grow up. I'm going to live there when I grow up. I just assumed they were in the same place. I was, 7 years old, let's say. To me, they were in the same city. Wherever that city was, I was going to live there with them. It took a while to understand that they were two different sides of the world, which was still fine with me. And so, as you know, when I was married and I had my son when I was 17, and we got married. We were married for like 11 years. And when we got divorced, I was like, I can move to San Francisco now from Chicago, where I grew up. And that's when I moved here. And I moved to San Francisco, and my mother could not believe that it had worked out perfectly for me. A job, an apartment, a place, school for my son. You would have thought we had been here 2 years. And then she comes out to visit, and she sees everything is as well set as I told her it was. And she said, well, I guess I have to get my passport because you're going to be going to Paris soon. And sure enough, in 2001, I made my first big journey. I'd been a couple of times before that, but I made the first big journey, and I got an apartment, and I've had an apartment in Paris since 2001. And now I have my carte séjour, and I am a resident of France, and I will be going back. I'm just here in San Francisco to close this phase of my life down and make that permanent move to Paris. I have been living the dream I had as a 7-year-old my entire life, and have never understood any other way. So I was nurtured by my parents, but it was also in my own mindset. It was just a given to me that this was going to happen. I never had any doubt in my mind. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I didn't doubt that it would happen. And so I made it happen.
And see, that part is so important because, it's an interesting thing. I've always told people about your 8-year-old dreams, because I believe that at about 7 or 8 years old, you are still connected to source, and your thoughts are that pure. That's why they always say, ask a kid, right? A kid will just go straight to, they haven't been socialized, hopefully yet, to have doubt and insecurity about what it is that they're seeing, thinking, and doing.
Or told that what they're thinking is wrong. It's like you have to go to school and you have to do your homework before you can go out and play. If you don't do the homework, you can't go out and play. You're not allowed to say that kind of thing. When you grow up, you have to learn how to be more polite to people. We beat, in a sense, the authenticity of ourselves out of us with all the social mores, with all of the things we're supposed to do. And, I always laugh, and my ex-husband and I are best friends. So I can say things about him here that people don't have to think I'm beating up on him. We're still the best of friends. But he told me one time I was going to school, since we were teenage parents, I had to go to night school for college. And I would go to school and I'd come home and he'd be so angry. You are a mother. You're supposed to come home and fix dinner for your family. And I went, I'm supposed to? And for 11 years, I didn't cook dinner. I said, oh no, I'm not supposed to do that. And I'm not going to do that. And the minute you tell me I'm supposed to do something, I am definitely against it. I've had many jobs where they said, well, Shelley, this is how you're supposed to act and what you're supposed to do. I said, and here's my resignation, because I know what I'm good at. I typed 120 words a minute. I studied office practice in high school. I do not have to stay here and take your abuse, emotional abuse against me. So that defiant person was always there, because the society was telling me that the way I thought was wrong. And so I fought against it. And then as I got old enough, and I'm very proudly 68 years old.
Whoa!
My publishing company is called 3555 Publishing because that's my birthday. So I'm very proud of my age. Somewhere along the line, you learn that all that stuff that they were telling you is just nonsense. And you learn how to not let it bother you anymore. You learn how to say, oh, okay, thanks for sharing, and then you go on and you do, as you say, live your best life.
So you presented several things that I also see as so important here. So I want to kind of go back and unpack a couple of those things. One of the things that you talked about was the family, your family foundation that your parents set, and your father with the dinner and being able to expose you to information and education. And when we look back, that really was the backbone of Black families, right? We spent that quality time, and that sewed into the kids. The kids had a sense of confidence about who they are. And so I would say I'm not surprised that some of the deliberate intentions to unravel that strong family foundation, why those things were attacked. Because if it is you divide, then it's very easy to conquer. It was never meant to be that one person would carry all the burden. And then even when you talked about, in your own marriage, your husband sort of saying, well, you're supposed to do, no, homie, you should be in that kitchen cooking because I'm at school, because that's for us. I'm earning something that's going to add value to our household. So you pick up the slack over here and do this so that I can do that. So let's kind of talk a little bit about, even if we look at that past versus what we see as some of the challenges that even these younger generations not having that type of foundation have found themselves struggling with. Suicide between the demographic of 25 and 45, that's the number one cohort. And in particular, kids of African descent, those of us Black Americans, are the primary suicide of young folks. And why else would you kill yourself if you felt that you were hopeless? There's nothing else. So
yeah, and it's not just, definitely African American kids, Asian kids as well, and that is part of society's pressure to achieve and do well and be in business and work 40 hours a week and 45 and 90 hours a week sometimes, and that is part of that mindset that society has put on us. We don't 2 weeks of vacation. What is that? 2 weeks of vacation a year. We live to work as opposed to work to live. Yes. And so it takes all the joy. It sucks the joy out of life. You feel you have to achieve, or in that social construct, you are going to be labeled as a failure. And so you overwhelm yourself with it until the point where you do feel hopeless. And, when I close my eyes at night and I go to sleep, it's such a peaceful place. They go for suicide. And suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And we have to tell people, we have to teach people how to go within themselves, how to reach out for help. I talk to a lot of people. I have a friend that came very close, and I could hear it in her voice when we were on the phone. I wasn't in town. I was out of town. So I just kept calling her just to make sure. And when I got back, I dropped my suitcase in front of my door. I did not even unlock my door. I dropped my suitcase in front of my door and I went down to her apartment. And when I saw her, I knew she was in need of help. And I called her children, and her children came out for her, and they made sure she got the help that she needed. But we have to be willing to listen to that. We have to be willing to hear our friends when they are not telling us with words that they need our help. And we have to learn how to ask for help because society teaches us we're supposed to be stronger than that. You know,
Oh man, you are speaking, this healing our homes has emerged. It's work that I've been doing, and I became clear about the last 3 to 4 years that in addition to all of the business stuff that I teach and speak about, that I was actually going to posit a lot in terms of the thought leadership area about mindset. Because when I looked back over my journey, that was what I could reflect on. Where I performed was when my mindset, I would say, was connected to source, but also when it was disconnected, where I could see I faltered, and where I felt I got lost in the noise and I needed to come back to what is my truth? What is it that I know? How do I reground myself? How do I get clear again? Right. And in that process, I began to realize that, oh my goodness, that is something to add. I used to wonder why, at times, why my parents were the youngest and my parents died early, much far before any of my peers were losing parents or even had sick parents. So it was a lonely journey through that process of trying to figure out how to heal myself. And those are what I call particular sort of forks in the road. Sometimes life will present you with a either or, it's not a and. So either you're going to pick up the pieces from that disappointment, that devastation, that death, and go forward, or you're going to stay there and wallow in the pain and therefore digress, right? But
there's
you're not
always
going
an
to do both.
and. There's
Right.
an and on both of those. Either you're going to progress and you're going to thrive, or you're not going to progress and you're going to stay mired in the darkness. You know,
Absolutely.
your
And so it's
mom,
picking.
and I have to bring your mom. Your mom was my buddy too, right? I met you, but she was my buddy, and I admired her for the way she was attached to you. Not only the umbilical cord, but whatever it was you wanted to do, your mom was there to support it. She was always, always, always in the room for you. So I remember when we lost her, and I remember how that left you alone. But I hope that as you've healed from that voice that she continues to give to you. No matter how bad it is, and yes, she left us way, way, way too early. She was always, always there. And she was part of the strength that I know that you have. Because I was there when she was like, your cheerleader. She could have had pom poms in her hand. She was your cheerleader.
Shelley, so many people don't understand that, but the business that I've launched, this wellness, this is all in honor of my mother, because I wasn't in real estate. She was the one in real estate when she died, but I had to learn real estate because I knew I always wanted to be an investor in real estate because of the seeds that she planted. But I didn't think I needed to know that because that was her expertise. So I could go on and do, the other parts of business that I was interested in. And my aim was to be an international business tycoon. That's, 9 years old, getting caught making my fake credit cards, playing business, right? And like you said, she said, it was like, when I tell people, I said, it's a funny thing that I didn't think it was a thing. I was just being me. And, we out and I see and I make these credit cards. And right when I perfect them, she burst into my bedroom with the, what are you doing? And you in trouble. And I'm like, I'm in trouble because I had taken her photo album refills and repurposed them to plastic coat my index cards and, create the pinprint. So I'm like, oh boy, and so she goes, what are you doing? And I'm not thinking that she's thinking, if you counterfeiting credit cards at 9, like what next, right? So she's like, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to explain it. And I'm thinking, oh, she's worried about this. But I said, Mom, I know who I'm gonna be. I see it. And she's like, she kind of let off a little nervous laugh. And she's like, what, baby? And I said, I'm an international business tycoon. I'm in the boardroom. I'm in my navy blue pinstripe suit. Everybody's looking at me. The San Francisco Bay Bridge is like, it was like all these details. Like I still see that same vision, the way that I saw it at 9 that I was describing to her. And you know what she did? What she said, wow, that's brilliant, baby. And that gave me the permission to believe it. But like you said earlier, I didn't realize that the Almighty and the ancestors said yes too. So this whole, my grandmother used to tell a story about we have a cross to bear, and depending upon your purpose will determine of your size of the cross. And sometimes the cross is so heavy that you can't carry it. You're like just pulling it because it's got a drag because you don't have enough strength to lift it up, right? And so when I thought about just the journey that I've been on, at times where I thought, well, if this door closed or that door closed, I would feel like it was something that I did, not understanding. And it really didn't become clear enough until 2020. We talk about the COVID, the shutdown, and all that stuff. It was like I got 2020 vision where I said I was far enough along the journey that I could look back and realize that, oh my God said yes. But now this is the work that you have to do. Like your father said, you want to play piano, sweetie? You're going to have to get a piano.
You gotta put
and
in the
you're gonna
work.
have to practice. This is the
Yeah,
work.
put in the work.
This
Yes.
is the work.
That's the work. And that's what, so all my life, what I wanted when I was young, after I, was going to be an architect, interior designer, fashion designer, all at the same time. I designed this house I was going to make. It's had 3 wings, a center and then 2, a west and an east wing. And it had a helicopter and airplane, runway. I had a boat dock from a yacht outside in the back. And I was going to go to Africa and pick up kids who were hungry and bring them back to Chicago, fix up all of the apartments on the south side of Chicago and house them, right? And I was going to speak several different languages and I was going to be an ambassador. Those were all the things that I said I was going to do. And I was going to work in the arts. And that was always in my head until, I realized that hungry children in Africa don't want to come to America. They want to be fed in Africa. The yacht that I was going to use ain't going to go over there and get them and bring them back. You have to grow out of your naivete, but you don't grow out of your passion, And so my passion is still, whether they're in Africa or Post Street in San Francisco, if there's a hungry child out there, I'm determined to make sure they eat. I am determined, everything that I have ever done. My mother said, you serve God by serving others. And I have spent my whole life in the service of others to serve God. And it's never been about the money for me because I believe that when you do what you love, the money follows.
Absolutely.
God takes care of you all the time. I've worked in nonprofit so I could teach kids about the world. I took kids to Senegal and Paris that were 9 to 11 years old. I raised almost $250,000 so that I could take 10 kids and 10 teachers from Bayview Hunters Point to Senegal, Dakar, Senegal, and to Paris, France, so that they could meet kids their own age, learn about the world. And this was after 2001. And kids were saying Muslims blew up the World Trade Center, right? I wanted them to see the ignorance of that statement that we were being taught. I wanted them to meet kids their own age. And I did that in 2004 and 2007. And we're about to do the 20th anniversary film of the first trip. And these kids are like teachers, and one of them now is an international relations person and she says because of that trip, when she put her feet on the African soil from that first trip. And so it does, my heart expands, because if we only help one person, we can help a million people through that one person. And so I've always done that. And you made a statement in the beginning that I want. You said your cup, people look at their cup half full or half empty. My cup runneth over. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because we only look at the one thing. In a half empty glass, we only look at one thing. We look at the water. But what else is in that glass? Absolutely. Air. Yeah. Air is in that glass. So you have water and then you have air, and that runneth over, right? So mine is never half anything. It's not half full. It's not half empty. Mine always runneth over. And so when you continue to have that mindset, even when people mess with you, like it's happening right now, because I am the co-chair of the Women's Caucus of Democrats Abroad France, and I'm a member of the Diversity Committee. And I'm telling them that you need a Black caucus because the Diversity Committee ain't all that diverse in the things that they do. And I've started a huge fight. I love a good fight, you know that.
You know?
I'm not starting a fight for any other reason. Well, first of all, I'm not starting a fight. I'm asking that there be a Black caucus so we can address our issues on an international level as African Americans. And I'm working on women's issues through the Women's Caucus with reproductive rights and reproductive justice. All of the decisions that have recently been made are impactful mostly to African American women and women of color who don't have the economic ability to do anything. And so I want to work with that. I can't wake up and look at the Eiffel Tower and forget that there's people out there that need the gift that God handed me to use. So because I work on that plane, everything's possible and everything is wonderful. And I work in gratitude. Even the fight is wonderful to me.
It's so interesting because two things come to mind. You're right in terms of being of service. And I know that I signed up for that, whether I was aware of it or not, you know, at a very early stage of my life. I petitioned my mother to make a decision that changed, you know, my life, because then it meant that I had a sibling. And it meant that now I had additional responsibilities that up until that point, I really didn't realize. Being a latchkey kid and other things, there was a certain amount of independence and freedom that maybe I would have had as a teenager, you know, had I not made those decisions as a young person. But nonetheless, I didn't back away from it. I accepted it. I never, it's a funny thing because later in life, when I learned about grown people talking about they needed to learn accountability, I'm like, my mother taught me accountability when I was 9 because I made this petition and I gave all these words and she held me to them. And I said, so that's when I learned that, wow, words matter, right? And, you know, you can't just say things and not, again, understand that there's something that goes with what you say. And what you have to do will show up more beyond those words, right? It's easy to talk.
That's why I did the banquet list. That's what the banquet list is all about. I'm writing a book. My book should be out soon called The Banquet List. It's all about, it's not a bucket. Life is not a bucket. It's not, oh, you know what? I'm going to die in a couple of months. So let me try to go here, do this, do that, do that. You're not engaged in life. You're checking off a list. Life is a banquet. It's a feast, right? And I took that from the movie, actually, Auntie Mame, which is my absolute favorite movie, because she went through the ups and downs of, the depression in 29 and blah, but she always did it with joy. Yeah, she took a minute to cry that she lost all her money. Then she went out and got a job, right? And then things turned around for her. But, and she traveled all over the world. And her whole saying was, life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. Live, live, live. Life is a feast. We can do the things, we can get up and go to work. We don't have to deny ourselves the joy in our life in order to do that. It's not about paying a mortgage and doing that kind of thing. It's about living a beautiful, happy life. And in the movie, The Bucket List, I point out to people, they went through, and he very lucky he was in the room with the billionaire who owned the hospital, right? Otherwise, his bucket list would have been right there on the floor when they rode him to the morgue, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they did all those things, and he was never able to climb that mountain while he was alive, right? We need to climb our mountains now. Mm-hmm. If we make sacrifices every day in our life for, oh, well, I guess I have to do this and this so I can take care of this and this. But we never say, I'm going to make that work right after I get back from vacation. We always say we don't have money for vacation. You go on vacation, you come back, You're still broke, but you got memories. And it makes you
Experiences,
work.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Experiences. Yeah,
Yes, you have experiences, you have memories. I want memories, not regrets. I want to
right.
be tired. I want to be tired. So here I am, 68. I've been trying to do the Paris Marathon now for 5 years in a row. I've only made it 5 miles in the race. One race, the other 4 times I didn't even go. I was like, yeah,
Oh,
maybe next
when is
time.
the next one? Because Doc and I, he's been training me for a marathon, and so I'm going to
April
be doing
7th of
April.
2024, and I am already registered.
Okay, April 7th, 2024. I may have to meet you in Paris for that, Mama.
Come, be there, because
Because
I'm working on the weight. I've lost about 47 pounds. I'm getting back to
congratulations.
healthy. My room here in San Francisco is filled with my workout equipment. So I don't need to spend money on a gym. I got a treadmill, a stationary bike. I got all my weights. I got 300 pounds worth of weights plates that I could put on. I have my yoga chair. I have my push-up bar, my pull-up bar. I have no excuse. And I've been doing a vegan, vegetarian kind of diet. I have a food addiction. I am the type of person that will sit here and all of a sudden I'll go out and buy 2 bags of potato chips and some caramel corn and pop, and I'll eat it all at one time. So I've been going to Overeater Anonymous meetings to help myself curb that. Because when you go to a meeting, as they say, when you're at a meeting, you're not eating. So I do that to overcome it. So I recognize my own flaws, if you want to call them that, but my own weaknesses. And I hang on to my goals. And when I make a mistake, what do they say? Pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and start all over again.
Yeah, continue it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the beauty in, I think. So I've been doing a course in miracles. Have you ever done the course?
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting because from 2003 was when I first was going to attempt to do the course. And it was after I had done Landmark for about a year. And I was introduced to Landmark after I finished my master's program. And what was unique about the master's program is that, everybody's, oh, you should go and get an MBA, or, oh, you should go focus on real estate. And I was like, no, if I'm spending my money for a degree, I'm going to get some tools that I think would be valuable. And the tools that I felt that I needed was around leadership and motivation, because I'd had the experience of being the CEO of my ad agency and having the big staff, and frankly being frustrated with people on the context of, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that I've never missed payroll, I never missed this, and you in a beautiful work environment, penthouse, and you are still griping about what? I'm sorry, you still can't come to work every day and do your job because of why? You focused on me. I'm creating a whole big vision. You know what I mean? But it was people unfamiliar with the idea. In their mind, how dare you try to be the CEO of something this big at your age? So we're going to show you that way. So I went to get some tools. And I remember in the master's program, when we overlap with the psych students, for me, that's like nails on a chalkboard. And I was like, oh, Lord. But the blessing that I got was that my professor, Professor Taryn Griffin, he's one of the Arkansas Nine. And he was a retired psychologist at that time, and he was teaching this class, and he became a gift because he also ended up spending some time mentoring me. And it was after that experience with him that then, when a girlfriend introduced me to Landmark, I got involved with the Landmark. I did the forum, and then I ended up doing Landmark for you, and then I was introduced to the course. But I didn't finish the course until last year. Although I tried several, additional times.
Yeah.
And every time I would start the course, it was like things would start shifting in life. And I'm like, what the heck is this course all about? Right now that I've gone through it, I'm on my second time through. But it became clear that not only was it about me being able to consume, but that I was going to teach, that I was going to lead people through this material. And that's what's manifesting in the Healing Our Homes. But what you talk about in terms of that kind of having a guideline, having a framework, a context, because it's just that. so many times I think we get so caught up in where you think you are in your journey versus where it is you want to go. And
Mhm.
most people can't get to where it is they want to go because they think that they are responsible for how they get there. And I don't
They
believe
also
that.
are very worried about other people's opinion about it. You don't ever look at it as where do I think I am? It's how do I look to everybody else, you know?
That right there is the biggest point, Shelley, because most people, we're so consumed about everybody else's opinion. And I finally had to say to somebody, I said, you know what I noticed is I spent a couple weekends of silence, God bless you,
Thank
in
you.
silence. And I said, and the funny thing that I noticed while I was in silence, when spirit was communicating with me, I didn't see you on the call. There was no conference call. It was like a one-on-one download. So how in the world could you possibly know what my assignment is when you ain't even on the download? So then that
Yeah.
helped me begin to go, thank you for your 2 cents, but you cannot possibly tell me what I hear as my assignment because you're not there.
I had a friend tell me one time, a few years back, not too long ago, I decided to take early retirement because, I don't care about an extra $100. I was enjoying freedom. So she said, "Oh no, girl, no, you're not supposed. Don't. You need to get you a job with the city. You need to call the mayor and tell him to get you a job with the city so you could put some money up and put it into a retirement account. So then you retire at 65 and you can have some real money." I said, "So what I just heard you say to me is your business is going to fail. It's no way you're going to make any money at this business. You need to go get a job." She said, "I didn't say that." I said, "No, that's exactly what you said." I said, "Because 5 years from now, when you think I should be retiring, I could be a multimillionaire because I did everything it was that I wanted. You're predicting my future based on the fact you don't believe in what I can do. And I don't appreciate it." And she said, "I'm just really so sorry. It's not what I meant." I said, "Well, make sure you don't do it again." I said, "Because I could sit here and I could do everything you just said, and I can walk into the mayor's office on my last day of work and drop dead from a heart attack. You do not plan my future. None of us can plan our futures." I believe in me enough to know that 3 years from now, I'm not going to need what you're talking about. And 3 years later, I'm living in Paris, right? Why
Right?
would
Like living your best life, doing what makes you happy, what makes your soul sing. I had to say that to somebody else because she was saying something, well, you should be worried about retirement. I said, well, sweetheart, you are looking from a different point. You're an employee. Yeah, employees, that's our labor. They do need to but I'm an employer. You tell me which business person, what's owner of the NBA team, owner of whatever, when do they talk about retirement? They don't talk about retirement. They may have a succession plan. But the business they plan to own until they decide that they don't want to own it anymore. So,
And that's
don't project.
retirement. That's retirement
That's
in their world.
retirement, right?
Yeah, it's
That's
like I gave it
retirement.
to my son. I'm gonna go fishing all over the world.
Exactly. Or I'm all sitting on the advisory board and I'm still advising the staff that's running the organization
Mhm.
2 days a week because that's what
I'm
I feel
still a
like I
major
am out on my yacht.
stockholder.
Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, but again, and so you do have to, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of being socialized to think small and to also be in a position of vulnerability because, some people were bred, I guess, to believe that an employer was the answer. And it's like more people, I know if I look along my journey, the times that I have experienced financial ruin have come from me following that narrative and shrinking from my business and allowing myself to be somebody else's employee. And every time wiped out and strategically,
Yeah.
every time an employer decided to eliminate my position, it was after I closed on another investment property and they had to verify that I was an employee. So How is that a benefit?
And that is the whole mindset right now behind the quiet quitting and the lying flat movement and everything. I think COVID had a lot to do with it, but the workforce, it changes over history. It's changed. It used to be that one little clerk that worked in somebody's office and had to have a letter of recommendation from the family, and then we had the industrial revolution. We had to educate people to be on the line, and it went into rules and process and so forth. And now it's getting back, in my view, we're getting back to the independent, creative way of doing business, working from home or wherever you want to work from, and doing what you feel you need to do, and not being beholden to somebody's schedule and/or what that is they want from you to do in the job description. When I ran the Bayview Opera House, my staff would say, well, I have to go to such and such, so I'm not going to be in this time, and I need to change my hours. I'm like, that's not up to me. I said, I want the phones answered from 9 to 5. You guys go sit in a room and decide who's going to do what and when you're going to be, and then just send me the schedule.
Okay.
I gave a sense of independence to them. I allowed them the time. You do your job you're required to do here. You have my permission to work on your own vision. I called it the Dream Factory, because what we dream, we can manufacture at the Opera House, whether it was the programs or staff's desires. When the city decided to increase the livable wage to $12 an hour, and Willie Brown had this big meeting in nonprofit organizations. It was at the Herbst Theater, which was a packed house, and it holds 1,000 people. And people were, if I have to pay $12 an hour, I have to lay somebody off because we don't have that kind of money, right? I had brought my whole staff with me, and I had them stand up when it was my turn to talk. I said, every single one of these people here, their ages 16 to 27, and they make $20 an hour. So I'm okay with $12 an hour. I pay them $20 an hour. I'm teaching them how to be in business. I said, my staff shows up for work because they know they can't find another job that pays them this well anywhere in the city. And I give them the autonomy to create their own future. That's the way you run it. And I had the greatest staff ever. I got tired of being an ED. It was time for me to leave. I did it for 10 years. It was time for me to leave and go after my dream of living in Paris. And so it was hard to walk away from. And I walked away from a 6-figure salary when I did it, right? But I walked into what it was that Shelley had been dreaming about since she was 6 years old. And that to me was more valuable than gold. And that's what we have to be willing to do. We'd be surprised when we walk out that door, when something bad happens, 10,000 good things are going to take its place. And we have to keep that faith that that's what it's for. God eliminates things from our life so that he can give us what it is he wants us to have.
Oh, that is so true. I mean, that is really the foundation of all of this. That is where I am at this particular point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sometimes they say it takes, 10 years, 20 years to become an overnight success. I say it's taken a journey of 40 years, but more importantly, the journey through healing from the devastations that, the loss of a mom, the loss of a father, the disappointment of, business failure, divorce, all of these things that usually people experience at a place that they may say is midlife. And then how do I pick up the pieces from that midlife? I'm dealing with a few people that have recently lost spouses, after 40 years, after 60 years of marriage. And that is a hard place. It's like, that's a long time to be connected with someone. And then you start to determine, well, what next? But what next is just that. You have to find something next where you believe you can add some value. And so I know that this journey, I'm sharing basically my mom's books on holistic health, Back to Eden. That was how, when Doc and I first met, one of the casual conversations, it was like, and I was like, yeah, my mother raised me on back. My mother raised me on Back to Eden. It was like, wow, I've not met another person that, I mean, small fact that we
I
share.
have Dr. Eden. My copy got so ragged that I had to buy a new copy.
And if you could find one these days, because some of that stuff is, out of publication, right? But these whole, this whole movement came from a decision that my mother made when I was 9, that she wanted to learn how to cook. And she wanted to do so in such a way that I would not have high blood pressure or any of the so-called traditional, illnesses that, typically Black families seemingly had. And she was struggling with high blood pressure because she was so stressed. Her stress level for her little petite body, now that I know, oh my God, that cortisol, that was way more than her little body could handle. That's what took her out, right? And so, but she planted the seed such that then I took care of myself. And then, of course, when I became pregnant with Sterling and how I planted the seeds for him, and I said, I'm so proud of this kid at 26 now. The kid has never had a cavity, never had, and he watched classmates have type 1, type 2 diabetes. And he didn't consume those things because when he was a little kid, and I told him why, I gave him the reason why. I'm like, your body, that's your vessel. I'm not punishing you by not feeding you this crap. I'm helping you protect your vessel. Now the kid is he's got his own music company and production, and his day job is that he's a trainer. He's the sales manager for a gym. And then he also has his private coaching clients where literally this kid's body is just, it's like, OMG.
You don't sound like a proud mommy at all. I'm a little concerned.
But that I really credit to my mom setting an intention that really changed, in my mind, that commitment to our wellness. And then to now want to share that with the world, saying, guys, this was one woman's decision. And I'm just able to show you how it impacted 2 generations, maybe 3 or 4 generations now, because I guess with Sterling and fitness, right? Hopefully he'll carry that on with his own.
That DNA has been reconfigured, and that's the message that gets carried forward. Mine was my grandfather was the only ever African-American to own a foot support shoe store franchise in the 50-year history of foot support. And it was at 47th and King Drive in the heart of Bronzeville, the Black community of Chicago. And it was one of the biggest selling stores because it was during the time where, we weren't allowed to go anywhere else. And so our money exchanged hands in our own community. I didn't realize as a kid that I was being taught the business. My mother would work the store during the summertime to allow my grandfather and grandmother to go on vacation. And she played this game where, we had to count the shoes and tell her how many shoes in this number are there in this color, and then me and my sister running back, competing with each other. Actually, we doing her inventory for her while she just sit there and write it down. But I learned inventory. I learned how to close a cash register. I learned how to run a business. I learned how to take care of customers. I also learned my grandfather was held the first ever Negro Business Expo in 1939 in Chicago. They got Black companies, Parker House and Sausage and Borden's Milk, I think it were, into mainstream grocery stores as a result of what he did. That hit me one day that with what I was doing, that's the legacy I needed to carry on. And that's what I do. My mother taught us, she took a job as a school clerk so that she'd have summers off, so that we went to the ballet, the symphony, the Museum of Science and Industry, the Museum of Natural History, the band shell, the historic films at the Goodman Theater. She filled us with culture. My mother always said, Black people do not go and support Black arts. So we'd go see, the African roots of dance and the Muntu dancers. And she made sure we saw Black plays and Black dancers and Black music, and that we supported our own as well as got a very rounded culture. I don't see myself as outside of any particular place. I see myself as carrying on the legacy of my grandfather and my mother, my grandmother, who was a jazz singer in clubs in Chicago, and my other grandmother who had my father when she was 15 years old, and what she struggled to do to make sure that she gave us all a life. She was I hated that woman for a while, she's grandmother. But in the end, she and I were like best friends. I did not know until after she had died that she had made me the executor of her will, because she believed that I was the only one that was going to carry her message. My mother told me that, and so I look at the legacy, the family that I came from, and I feel so proud. I hope they feel proud of me, because I'm proud of where I came from. And I realized, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I was looking at the whole Red Summer. So, in 1919, there was the massive lynching of African Americans all around the country, because, we were heroes in World War I, and came back with the honor of the Croix de Guerre from the French for what we did. And then there was this attack all across the country, and it started in Chicago. And for the first time ever, it's like it was the moment of awareness. I saw where ground zero was. And I had been doing all my family history. And it was the blocks where my grandparents grew up. So in 1919, my grandfather was like 15 years old, 16 years old. All of a sudden, I'm realizing they experienced this firsthand, but they never talked about it. They never shared what that must have been like. And there is a museum in Chicago that keeps the memory of this alive, and where the maps are and where they were. And when I take my census that I've been doing on the family and seeing where they were, we were right in the heart of all of that, right in the heart of where it was happening. And all of a sudden you have this new sense of purpose. That you have to live. I have to be strong because of what they survived. And so it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me fighting for equality. I've learned from Barack Obama and Michelle, you don't get angry, you get organized. And that's the kind of thing that I'm doing now. And like your mom, I was very stressed out about a lot of things. And this is why I put on so much weight. I mean, you know me, and I'm about 20 pounds heavier than when you and I first met. And this is a result of all the stress I went through. I hit 301 pounds. And when I hit 301, I said, absolutely not, Shelley Bell. You're not going out like this. And my doctors, I had a mini stroke, a TIA in 2002, because that was when I was fighting with Gavin Newsom, when he was mayor, about firing the director of the planning department. I was president of the planning commission then. And I said, I'm not going to, no, you're not going to fire him. You're going to find him another job within the city. He had one more year of his retirement, and you're not going to take that from him. I don't fire black men. Sorry. So we were at odds about all kind of things and all that. And that's when I was raising the money for the kids, to take the kids to Africa and Paris. And the stress hit me, and I had the TIA. And I said, time to take care of yourself. So I have been working for the last 20 years in all of the things around my health that I allowed to get out of hand. And that's why I finally am now at the point where I am losing the weight. My doctor is, she's a challenge, because I won't take certain drugs. She's like, well, you had the TIA in 2002, and so you have a 20% chance of having another stroke. I said, well, in 2002, when I had it, they told me I had an 80% chance of having a massive stroke within a year. Now it's 21 years later, and I only got a 20% chance. So evidently I'm working in the right direction. Well, if you take it between now and over the next 10 years, these things could happen. I'm like, I'll be 78 years old in the next 10 years. A whole bunch of things can happen. And so I've taken that, and because I've started eating right, my blood pressure is way down. She was amazed. I just did my physical last week. I do my blood test and everything. She said, you are in amazingly good health considering your age. And I'm going to say, and my weight. And that just motivated me. So I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do to take care of me. I'm not listening to the noise of, "Ooh, you need these drugs. Ooh, you
Right.
need to do this," right? I'm not listening to that. I'm taking care of Shelley, and I'm helping other people, and I'm living my best life ever.
Well, you know, I think that's a perfect place to conclude our conversation for today. But guess what? We're going to continue this conversation because I'm putting this Paris marathon, and I already know Doc will be like, yeah, let's do it. It's already a done deal. We're working on resort locations. We have a chateau in France that we're going to view shortly. One of his colleagues has made available for us to book, but I can't, start planning our business yet until I see the place. And then also I have several sites in Italy. So we're headed there, and then also to Africa. We're headed to Senegal, to South Africa. We have Kenya, Uganda, and a few more countries that are all providing us with sites to consider for our resort. So we're coming to you pretty soon, Missy, and definitely April will be a great place. In fact, we were just talking about that, about getting our marathons going, because it's also a way for us to promote our wellness resorts, because typically people who are
Yeah.
participating in these things, they're trying to live their best lives, and Doc has set the intention to be the fastest man in his, he competes still in the Masters. He wants to be the fastest man when I think he said 100 or 120. I'm like, yeah, I'll be the fastest woman at 120. Let's do it.
No, girl, you'll be the second fastest because I'm going to be the fastest.
Well, thankfully, you'll hit 120 before me, since there's a little bit of difference in our age. In this case, we're the same age, so we'll be 120 around the same time. So no problem. We all get a chance to hold the
We'll
title.
just hold each other's hands and run across the finish line together.
Exactly. So I love that. And I think that that's how you set it up, right? That's how you set up for the future. But anyway, before we conclude our conversation, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for dropping so many nuggets, for sharing, so many things about your journey, because as with everything, this is aimed to help people, to help them reflect, and more importantly, to help them glean some ideas around, if I'm stuck, maybe I can take some of these tools and apply them and get unstuck. Because it doesn't matter where you are. This is not about beating you up or whatever. You are where you are. Okay, who cares how you got there? That's yesterday's news. Where do you want to go from where you are? And how can you set that intention so you can get
Release
there?
the fear. Release the fear. Do what you fear. Watch it disappear.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Miss Shelley Bell, for this afternoon conversation. I know we went a little bit long, but that's because you were dropping so many nuggets that I did not want to conclude early. So we went a little bit over. Thank you. I hope to see you very soon.
I still love and adore you, my dear. We've been friends forever and ever. And I was just reminding Wanda Whitaker that we met at your marketing seminar that you did for Excel. And that's where I met Wanda and Ave. So you have brought beautiful people into my life, and you have remained a beautiful person in my life.
Oh, Shelley, the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much. And I love, not only being able to share our relationship, but I just love the fact that you also had a relationship and adored my mom, because, she definitely meant everything to me. Absolutely.
That was my girl.
And give a big hug and kiss to your son and family.
I will.
All right.
I will.
We'll speak real soon.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, everyone, I'd like to thank you. As I said, if it's Wednesday, if it's noon Pacific Daylight Time, then that's another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with Miss Shelley Bradford Bell today. I think there was a lot of nuggets dropped in that conversation. Hopefully some you can glean and put to practice in your life if you need them. As I mentioned, there's more information I'll be posting if you follow me on my Facebook or my LinkedIn page, or even on YouTube, about the Healing Homes Leadership Program, which happens each Sunday. We do a check-in to see where you are along your journey of putting together your 90-day life plan, and or beginning your journey through A Course in Miracles. Again, it's Dr. Stephanie signing off, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. So take care. And until then, spend some time thinking about loving you. Self-love is where you begin that journey. Take care, guys.